This episode. This fucking episode. How do I even talk about this episode? First of all, DHX, how fucking dare you? How dare you play with my feels this hard? I didn't consent to this. Why you do this to me? Let's just get right into things. You know the drill. Let's start with me giving a little praise to DHX for getting their research right. I myself didn't know if tortoises hibernate or not, so I did a little research, and yes, they do. Ideally, they hibernate for about 9 to 16 weeks. The first article I found was actually advice to pet owners on how to handle hibernation, and they chastise most pet owners for trying to impose a hibernation of up to 6 months, when in the wild, tortoises need about 3 or 4 months to be happy and healthy. So good job, Cindy Morrow, for doing the research. Now that major praise is out of the way, let's talk about some minor things I loved. Get ready, because there's a lot of them we need to talk about. First, Cloudsdale actually moves. In the official map, Cloudsdale appears anchored pretty much right above Ponyville. But here we're shown that it's actually capable of movement, and in fact needs to move in order to bring winter to each city and town. Next up, the music for the scenes in the weather factory creates an odd contrast. When we first go in, I swear to you, the strings sound like the strings for Rainbow Factory. But then, as soon as we enter the winter lab, the music shifts to old school Gene Wilder era Willy Wonka. That's bizarre, but I like it. And then there's Twilight dropping that Game of Thrones reference. I personally loved it. It was so obvious, and hence some people are finding it really forced, but it got a pretty big laugh out of me. It probably won't on repeats. Sometimes, sadly, references by their nature, if played purely for laughs like this, tend to have a short shelf life. It's all about the initial impact and how it jars with the tone of the show. That's where the comedy comes from. What probably won't get stale, though, is the Rainbow Snow Nuke. Hey, Ponyville, welcome to the Winter Wasteland, bitches! The next minor thing I loved was Pinky phasing through Artie's wall when everyone else went through the door. At first you mistake it for just Pinky physics, except it's not. Artie's house is a cloud. Clouds are simply water vapor. In theory, you should be able to walk right through them like that. Technically, in theory, you should be able to fall right through them, but these are magical clouds, so don't question it. Pausing for a second, I want to give more praise to Morrow for how she wrote Pinky this episode. She was completely in character. Her spastic nature didn't detract from anything. She felt emotionally invested in what was going on. Her scenes weren't just there for comic relief and did help move the plot along. She was in tune with the emotions of her friends, and just in general she felt like she belonged. I shouldn't have to give praise for this stuff, but after last season, it's still refreshing to see them getting her right so far, and getting her back on track, even if she hasn't been the focus character yet. She's back to feeling like an active part of the ensemble again. Now, back to the list of minor things. This is the first time, outside of the comics, we've really seen Rainbow Dash's house. And I wonder what her income is to afford a place like this. Fuck the Crystal Treehouse, Artie has herself fucking Cloud Manor over here. That can't all be from just being a weather pony. Some of that has to be from winnings in races or other athletic events that we just haven't had the chance to see, but we know she participates in. And lastly, get some fucking Rick Ross on, because Fluttershy was a fucking boss this episode. The lesson from Breezy stuck with her, and she laid down the motherfucking law. And I'm glad it was her. This plays up the fact that Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash have been pals since they were fillies. Twilight was trying to push AJ into the role of being at Dash's shoulder, probably because she knows that AJ and RD are incredibly close. We can also probably assume the other, more subtextual reason as well, that AJ has had to deal with loss before. But while AJ isn't afraid to be emotional, when has she given any indication of being all that comfortable around tears? Also, we'll get back to this whole thing in just a little while, because it bears expanding on. Now, let's get to the real meat of the episode. Let's talk about the song. I have mixed feelings about this song. Musically, I love it. It's what one wants from a Rainbow Dash song. It's got a rocking guitar line and heavy drums, and it builds to these huge crescendos in the choruses. And yet, it still sounds totally typically MLP. And Ashley Ball's singing is wow. Why has RD's singing been so restricted so far? Between Awesome As I Wanna Be, her lines in Friendship Through the Ages, and here, it's clear RD should have had a solo song well before now, as Ashley just nails it in each of those performances. But lyrically, it's so fucking stupid. Like, no, really, everything about the lyrics makes me want to scream either Captain Obvious or no shit, Sherlock. Except for this one little line. The one where RD says she's trying to do all of this and keep Tank with her so she won't have to be lonely. What is going on in Rainbow Dash's life that she has an idol-worshipping adopted sister, a commanding officer who likes her a lot, and the closest group of friends one could ask for, and she still feels lonely even with all of that love? I know I'm probably reading too much into just one small line, but that just made me go, huh? In less ambivalent news, this is once again a fine example of this being the season of utterly awesome facial expressions. I mean, you know how people call Pinky's psychotic derp moment in Party of One her cupcakes face? I'm calling RD's rage face here her rocket to insanity face. That's the face of a woman that's screaming on the inside, say another word and I will fucking gut you. And then the freaking Grinch face. Oh my god, the Grinch face. And these are just the two major ones. The rest of the episode is full of awesome faces from everyone. Next up, oh my god, RD, it's Tank footies and Tank it's RD footies. Oh my god, that's the most adorable. I have fucking diabetes. I'm sorry, I just died from the cute for a second. And now let's talk about AJ crying on the inside. Look at this face. This is the face of someone that's experienced loss before. This is the face of someone that had to grow up too fast in the wake of that loss. And that's the other reason AJ wasn't right to help RD here, because she grieves differently and speaks to the different experiences the two have had. RD likes to play at being tough. AJ has had to force herself to be tough. AJ isn't playing at anything. And lastly, I know we've seen RD have several moments of being an emotional roller coaster in the past, but I think this is the first time we've seen her cry. Please don't make her cry again. I'm not sure I can handle it. Now, with all this praise, is there anything at all I didn't like? Actually, yes there is. I'm not holding it against the episode too much, and I'll explain why in a second, but it is kind of frustrating that RD does the things she does and faces no repercussions for them. Now, the reason I'm not holding it against the episode is because after seeing her broken like this, having her be chewed out for it just might come across as having been too mean-spirited. This is just more of a general concern with the show itself, is that the writers seem to feel that it's okay to have the main six do whatever the fuck they want and not face punishment for it because they're the protagonists. In this case, including sabotaging one's place of employment, and because of the nature of the work that place does, possibly committing an act of fucking treason. But that's not a good message to send kids. If this is truly still a kids show, then kids need to know that sometimes good people do bad things, and that when they do, they deserve to face consequences like everyone else. But as I said, this episode puts RD and us through the ringer enough as is. Let's just assume that Twilight at least, and possibly her boss, Spitfire, and even maybe Celestia and Luna chewed her ass out until it was old bubblegum, but decided to let her off because she was acting under duress. Now, there's other complaints being lobbed at this episode, but I think those are worthy of a rebuttal video all their own. Besides that, they're not things I personally consider a problem, and hey, this is my review. All in all, I loved this episode. I haven't heard this good in a long time. It really is a great, if exaggerated for the medium, exploration of the 5 stages of grief. It's another example of this being the season of top-notch facial expressions. Fluttershy being the one to get through is a perfect example of the bond she and Rainbow Dash share, and a nice reversal of how things normally go between them, and it's just almost perfect. I have some nitpicks, obviously, when it comes to RD facing no repercussions for her actions, but there's already fix being made to deal with that. I'm giving this a 4.5 stars. And now, to leave you with this, is that Scootaloo's dad? Bye. This episode